Good evening. I would like to now call the Winton Woods Board of Education regular meeting to order. It is 6:30 p.m. on Monday, August 28th, 2017. I would like to ask if everyone in the audience could turn all of their electronic devices to silent or off. That would be greatly appreciated. And please join me and rise for the state of the schools, the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Seymour, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Ruggles.
Here.
Mr. Birdie. Dr. Johnson.
Present.
Mrs. Kuhn.
Here.
Mrs. Miranda.
Present. Our first item on our agenda this evening is our district honors, recognitions, gifts, and introductions. Mr. Superintendent, you have the floor.
Yes, I'd like to call up the incredible, talented, spectacular Carey Sullivan. We had the pleasure of the special recognition program in Green Hills, rededicating Green Hills about the green belt and the community. And I heard Carey sing for the first time. And I can tell you guys, it was very emotional. She is an incredible, incredible singer. Incredible voice, a cappella by herself, out in the wilderness in Green Hills. And there was not a dry eye in the area. So I'm going to read a little bit about why we're recognizing her. Winton Woods High School, Carey Sullivan, Mr. Joe Watley, and Miss Beth Miller, teachers. The Winton Woods Board of Education congratulates Carey Sullivan, who auditioned for and was selected for the National Association for Music Education All National Choir. Carey will be attending the 2017 All National Honors Ensembles event from November 26th to 29th at Disney's Coronado Resort Springs in Orlando, Florida. First time in the history of Winton Woods City Schools. Absolutely amazing. So in order to celebrate the rain, Carey's agreed to sing Singing in the Rain. But her voice is absolutely incredible. And so I'm very, very proud of you. And I think that you're going to go very, very far in whatever you do. Are you a senior? Junior. Oh, yes. We got some more songs left. Yes. So there's a cordless mic up. We'd like for you to say a few words just to talk about who inspires you and where all this incredible talent comes from.
I didn't prepare a speech, so I'll try not to ramble. But honestly, without the amazing choral directors that we have at Winton Woods, I wouldn't have really anything that I have now as far as music goes. Mr. Watley made me audition for All National, even though I didn't feel like it at first, but thankfully he did because I got in. Miss Miller introduced me to the guy who gives me voice lessons now, so both of them are really big forces in my life that kind of give me new opportunities and inspire me to do great things with what I've been given. As far as singing talent goes, I don't know who I got it from, honestly. She'll tell you it's her, but I don't know where it came from. But anyway, I'm really honored to be able to be the first to go to All National from Winton Woods, and I'm going to audition again next year, so maybe 2 years in a row.
And stay tuned. Next year's convocation, Smith, Jordan, and Sullivan.
Okay.
Absolutely, I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where's Dr. Holden?
Right here.
Okay, come on up. So during the 2017 New Tech Annual Conference, several members of our staff were selected to present at this conference in St. Louis, Missouri, which was held on July 6th through the 10th. The Board of Education applauds the following for their commitment to children. Now, you have to understand, we have not been New Tech for 20 years. It's only been a few. And for New Tech to see the great work that our teachers are doing and said, we want them to come and present because they have a body of knowledge that could really make the New Tech name a household word. So our people, they would make you proud based on the sessions. The only thing that frustrated me, they had some of their sessions at the same time. So I wanted to kind of peek in and run around and see how things were going. You guys were the talk of St. Louis. So thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your preparation. Thank you for your hard work. And above all, thank you for being a Winton Woods warrior. So Doc's going to call your name. And I'd like for the whole board to come up if you could so you can get a picture with them because they made the district very, very proud.
So first, I'm going to say we have Josh Omstutz, who is not here tonight, but I don't want to neglect to.
He's on his way.
He's on his way.
He's stuck in traffic.
Karina Denny. Rhonda Hobbs. Mr. Brandy Samina Wazalewski.
Dr. Hogan, if you could please go to the podium so you can be heard.
Hearing, sorry.
Coach C, I saw Coach C in St. Louis a couple of times, and he was at Sweetie Pie's enjoying the food, so way to go, Coach C.
He's actually really good.
Jennifer Haller. Lauren Kempton. I don't see Lauren here tonight. Andrew, yes. Andrew Locke, I do not see him with us tonight either. Catherine Sparky. And Meredith Steen, who I don't see.
Dr. Holden, you want to say a little bit about what this means to our district?
So this is important because these teachers and staff members really present the good work that we do at the New Tech Annual Conference. So it's really the convening of all of the schools in the network from all over the country and Australia. And we have so much going on here, so many positive things that when folks go to the conference and see Winton Woods, there is a buzz about that. So we have a name within the network, and it's a good name. So we hope to grow this cadre of teachers who present at the national conference because not only is it good for them, it's great for us. So thank you, because
Thank you.
it is hard work.
Very much. Thank you, Doctor. All right. Our next recipient is the Community Spirit Award. And I'd like for Ms. Ruglis and Ms. Miranda to come up to the podium, please. Usually when you're working with big organizations, you'll get the 53rd vice president of the organization to come and be part of the celebration. Well, this is very, very special and very, very unique. Mr. Urban is the president and CEO of Mercy Health Fairfield, and he has given his time, commitment, energy, and patience to Winton Woods City Schools. He comes to every meeting. He's very, very receptive to our work, and so we wanted to recognize him for the great work and the great contribution. Mrs. Ruggles has been an integral part of creating this network and this relationship, so I'd like for you to say a little bit about Mr. Urban's work.
Okay. It would be my pleasure. I just wanted, basically, I am so focused on student achievement. And this opportunity came to me through another community member that said, hey, I know some of the work that you do in the community, and I want you to connect with Mercy. And one of my passion is academic achievement, but my other passion is community engagement, because community engagement and community partnerships gives us an opportunity to reach the goal of student achievement. And so Mr. Smith is right. When I reached out to Mercy, the momentum went tremendously fast. And so I reached out to Dr. Wilson, and we had several meetings that Mr. Urban has come to help us think about what can we do to help the Winton Woods City School District and enhance some of the things that they have done. And we also have a connection with Buffalo, okay? So that just really connected me with him. He was open to so many different opportunities, and I'm telling you, with the staff that we have on board that are coming up with some of the innovative ideas of how we can make an impact on student achievement, this man is going to be at the helm of making sure that that happens, because his heart is genuine and his willingness to give back to our community is huge. So I am extremely pleased to introduce everybody to Mr. Tom Urban, as well as present the Community Spirit Award. Mr. Tom.
Thank you very much. May I say a thank you?
Yes, please, please.
Podium's yours, sir.
It's yours.
Well, don't say that for those that know me well, but I do want to thank Anthony and Katrina and the board for this honor, and it is indeed an honor that I accept on behalf of the entire Mercy Health family. That's one of the joys of being in a leadership position in any organization, but for me at Mercy, I get the pleasure of being able to stand up and represent the hospital, which is just down the street. And I think that's important when it comes to community partnerships, because we work hard each and every day to make our community a better place to live and work. We both, as a healthcare organization and an academic organization, Winton Woods City Schools, have the same, very similar goals to strengthen the community where we all work and live. And the students that come through the Winton Woods School District are the people that will be taking care of people like me when I get older. I mean, these are individuals that are benefiting from the academic experience that's occurring within Winton Woods. And I applaud the efforts of Anthony. I've appreciated getting to know Katrina of late, and we are fully behind and supportive of the goals that this organization has. And again, it's an honor and a pleasure to be part of the family in this way. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can we go ahead and redo that picture since Mr. A is here now? We want to make sure you're in the picture, Mr. A. Come on up, everybody.
The nice person who's taking all the pictures is our new publicity writer, Miss Jackson, and I think she learned that 1, 2, 3 at Bowling Green to get people ready for the pictures. So,
Oh, thank you. I'm sure I did forget that. I don't want to in the picture.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Smith. Congratulations to our wonderful staff and students, or student tonight. And thank you again for coming and joining us this evening and for everything you have done and continue to do. So thank you. At this time, we will take a 5-minute recess. All right, we will resume our regular board meeting. And we have no comments from the public, so we will move on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of minutes as attached. Board colleagues, unless you see any necessary changes, a motion would be in order, please.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Sure, Mrs. Ruggles? Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye, motion passes, and we'll move into the treasurer's report. Mr. Seymour,
There
you
isn't
have the
too-
floor.
There's not too much activity to this point, except for the month of July, and later we'll be looking at this year's financial plan. But our year-to-date revenues in July were 10.7 million, most of which was real estate collections from the August settlement. And also our expenditures in the general fund were 3.3 million for the month of July. During the month of July, though, we committed $6.7 million to contracts. So most of our contracts are out and signed for the year. And we also ended the month with approximately 43 million. 21 million was the general fund, 10 million for our building fund, and 44 million for our classroom facilities project.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Any questions for our treasurer? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and let that financial report for the month of July 2017 be submitted to audit. And Mr. Seymour, back to you for 7.01 and your treasurer's recommendations.
For the month of July, we had approximately $95 million invested, and we earned $137,000 and some $300. $137,300.
Board, a motion would be in order for 7.01.
Madam President, I'd like to approve the investment report as presented, the July.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye, motion passes unanimously, and we'll move into 7.02, Mr. Seymour.
And if I could, I'd like to take about 5 to 10 minutes to review your budget plan for the year and your forecast.
Yes, please. You have the floor, Mr. Seymour.
It's such an exciting topic. People can't wait. So basically, this is for our operations for this coming school year, and we interchange these words. The state of Ohio calls it appropriations, but we're constantly calling our school year 2017-18 budget. We basically have a budget that includes your general fund, state funds, and federal special revenue funds, which are your state and federal projects. And of course, now we have a large capital outlay because we have a new facilities project undertaking. This year, we're totally estimating a pure guess as to what we might spend or commit in our facilities project for about $12 million for the first year. It's purely a guess. Of course, our general fund is where you do most of your discretionary spending. Your other funds are your lunchroom. It makes up the largest part of your lunchroom, of their other funds. So our major special revenue funds would include our athletic band and music for around 200, early childhood for 112,000, auxiliary services, which is your religious private schools in the district, of 365,000, IDEA special education estimated at $1 million, and our Title I school improvement of 160. Our permanent improvement fund or other major funds, our permanent improvement is $874,000. This is the fund that's currently funding your new stadium turf and your new track. Was all funded out of permanent improvement, and no general operating funds were utilized to do that project. Then, of course, we have our building fund there again at $1 million. The reason you have a building fund and classroom facilities is that your building fund is approximately 10% of what you plan to spend for your facilities, because that's called your local initiative or your local funds, which are what you do not get matching state dollars for. So you can see our projects around $110 million. We're estimating that we could spend up to approximately 10% of that this year, or commit it in a contract. And then, of course, we have our food services at $2.2 million. And of course, the major fund that we all scrutinize is our general operating, and that's the one that we monitor for tax collections and levies. Our income will be generated, about 51% of that will be our local taxes, including our rollback. We have our state foundation, which is at 39% of our total receipts. And then, of course, we have other local income and other state income. But the majority of all your funds are local taxes and state support, make up almost 90% of what you bring in the general fund. Of course, we like to monitor our total evaluation. As you can see, every 3 years it's updated, and we are scheduled for an update for collections in 2018 calendar year. So we hope that it's stabilized, but you can see how it steps down every 3 years during a estimated reappraisal or a full factual update reappraisal, which is what's going to come in 2018. And this is valuable because this is how much each mill that you levy generates. So if you levy 1 mill, it's $439,000, and back in 2008, 1 mill would generate $546,000. Our current tax base, of course, is $439 million, and our current voted millage is 85.81, with an effective millage of 53.69 for residential and 64 for commercial. Of course, the effective, as everyone knows, is as reappraisals and values go up, the effective millage goes down because you're not permitted to collect any additional funds as a result of an increase in evaluation from the date that you passed the original millage. And your last passage was in 2009. So a lot of your supporting levies for your general fund are older in nature, especially your continuing. Our total real estate taxes that will be generated is around $25 million, of which includes $2.8 million in homestead and rollback. State foundation will be $19 million, with approximately $150,000 for special ed transportation and $195,000 for our preschool program, which is funded outside of our foundation formula. Our other local receipts, our revenue in lieu of taxes, as you know, we enter into tax incremental financing projects with our municipalities, and they agree to hold us harmless, so they pay us directly for any tax losses that may be generated as a result of that incremental financing, which tends to be good for both for the district to maintain industry and entice businesses to come to Forest Park, Green Hills, or Springfield Township. We do have agreements in all three municipalities. Our open enrollment is estimated at 1.4 million. Our tuition at 1.2 million. That's tuition coming into the district for people choosing to go to Winton Woods. And then rental facilities at 225, and then all the other categories rolled together at 362,000. Other state receipts, we have a small amount for career and technical education, Medicaid reimbursement for 150,000. We participate in the Ohio Medicaid reimbursement program for children who receive services on speech, physical therapy, and speech therapy that are on Medicaid in the school district. We receive catastrophic aid of approximately 120,000. This is state reimbursement for children whose cost of doing an education exceeds $37,000 a year due to a special handicap situation that they have for their educational program. We also have E-rate, which is federal subsidy for communication, for technology, and of course the ever-known casino proceeds, which we're going to save the schools at $180,000. How do we spend the dollars? I'm happy to say that the district spends almost 73% right directly on the kids in the classroom. Operations is around 25%, but operations includes your transportation, your custodial, your administration, and all the things that help support the educational program. But the students right in the classroom are getting about 73 cents on the dollar. When you, actually 74 if you include your extracurricular activity program. Looks like a real dollar bill, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Also, I tried to show the history of our expenditure pattern, and if you take a look and go back to our budget for 2011 through and our current year and average them, the district has averaged an increase over those years of approximately 3% increase over the entire period from 11 to 18, an average of a 3% increase. Salaries and benefits are included. All negotiated increases are included. As you know, we entered into an agreement. Our WWTA will receive 3.5% increase in wages for this coming school year, and our classified staff 2.5% increase in their wages for the coming year. Any staffing reallocations are included. Healthcare, we're happy to say, is projected at no increase for the year, and dental has a projection in it for the current year of 5%. Some of the non-personnel things that increased are our instructional support, which is things that help support the classroom, our curriculum coaches, our contracts to help support our teachers with technology and those types of things. Our tuition is up about $600,000. Our tuition bill is rapidly approaching $5 million. That includes community schools, Ed Choice, foster child placement, autism scholarships, John Peterson scholarships, and all the special ed tuitions for children who have individual educational plans that we cannot service and they need outside servicing, and we pay the tuition for those students. It's hard to keep a handle on all the tuition with special ed, so you try to budget for it as best as you can. And of course, utilities, 200,000 increase for utilities, which is another hard thing to estimate your utility increase each year. So for the general fund, we had a beginning cash balance of 19 million. We're going to have receipts of 49 million, estimated expenditures at 53, and have an estimated cash balance of 15 million at the end of the year. I'm pretty sure that ending cash balance will be better than that. We've tried to cover our appropriations to our budget to handle all situations that may arise. In our 5-year forecast, What's included in the forecast, as you know, the state of Ohio and the board monitors regularly a 5-year forecast, which is used to guide and plan for tax levies when you're going to need replacement levies to try and help the board prepare for the future out 5 years. And the main reason for that is to monitor where you're at on your revenues and your expenditure plan. We held most of the revenues constant except for projected revenue for state foundation. As you know, we are on what's called the cap for state funding. We have a formula where we get certain dollars for each category, but the state will not let you receive more than 3% increase each year. So they estimate what your funding should be, and then you get 3% of that each year until you get your state funding. And by the time you get to your state funding, it will most likely will have changed as to how the state funds education. But currently for 18, we are seeing a $800,000 increase. In 19, it's estimated at $700,000, and in 2020, we should cap on our funding formula with an additional $300,000. Also, in your 5-year forecast is the renewal of the emergency levy, which has to be renewed in 2020. Included in that is $4.2 million, or for the first, we're July to July, and as you know, taxes run calendar year. So the first year, it's $2.1 million, and then $4.2 million, and there would be no increase in taxes with this renewal. Your last 10-year levy asks for $4.2 million, and that's what you would ask for again, should you choose to. But it's my understanding the board is being very open with this, and we're going to ask for a renewal of no new taxes. And we've been planning for this for about the last 4 years, and we continue to plan through 2022 now. We've included all the negotiated agreements for 18. No salary increases have been projected beyond the current year, but we did project increments, meaning if a teacher or a classified employee is due a step increase, they would receive that. But there would be no a cost of living adjustment or change to those salary schedules in the forecast as it currently is. Healthcare was increased at 0 for the current year and 4% for the years beyond that, and dental at 5% for all the years. Another assumption is that we will save at least $2.5 million or adjust our budget from 18 to 19 for next year. So as you can see on the bottom line, the very bottom line includes the renewal, and we estimate our cash balance at 14, 12, 9, 5, and then barely breaking even. That's including the renewal of the levy and shows the need for that levy without an increase to the taxpayers, but shows a need to continue that operating levy. This also illustrates how you, as you get towards the 2022, you're using your cash balance to fund the district. And obviously, with the levy renewal, you can see through 2022, the green line shows all the funds available. And when green meets red, that's when you have to take another look. But basically, with the renewal of the levy in fiscal year 20, we'll be fine through 22. Of course, this is all subject to change and new funding formulas, and this is our best estimate as it is right now. Now, I don't know if you have any questions, but that is this year's budget plan and your 5-year forecast.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour. Any questions, comments for Mr. Seymour before we take the motion? Okay, well, let's go ahead and put the motion on the table then. We'll start with 7.02.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the permanent appropriations for fiscal year 2018 as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
This is for the permanent appropriations, I'm sorry.
Yes, 7.02.
Dr. Johnson and Mrs. Kuhn, correct?
Yes.
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye, motion passes unanimously, and now we can hear the motion for 7.03.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 5-year forecast for fiscal years 2018 through 2022 as presented.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Sure. Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Treasurer Seymour, for that presentation. And we will move into 7.04.
Every once in a while, we have a situation where, as you know, the treasurer can certify a purchase under $3,000 if the requisition or purchase order wasn't in place, if the money was available then and it's currently available. But in a rare situation, occasionally that situation may arise where that amount exceeds $3,000 and you need board permission for that. We had a situation where the treasurer's office closed the purchase order for a vendor, and then it came to our attention that the vendor forgot to invoice us for the month of October and for the I think it was the month of May. And the amount of those invoices exceeds my authority, and so tonight I'm asking the board to approve the now and then for the vendor listed for UTS for the invoice 103116 and invoice number 053117.
Board of motion would be in order for 7.04.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion, and I'll make sure I state it correctly for the record, that based on the Ohio Revised Code, Section 5705.41, that, I don't know how specific, do you want me to be on this?
You can just
but,
say that you grant the now and then certificate for UTS for the invoices as stated,
Okay,
if that's okay with you.
that would be fine. But I make a motion that we authorize the payments for the now and then certification for the two specific items listed, the 2 invoices, as requested by the treasurer.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any questions or discussion?
Just a point of clarification, Madam President. She made a motion for now and then. It's the then and now, just so that it's clear.
Then it, yes,
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's then and now certificate.
then and that, yes, thank you.
No problem.
Any further questions, discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye, motion passes unanimously. And we will now move into our reports from the superintendent, starting with 8.01, school reports.
Yes, Madam President and Board. The reports are in, and I think that one of the things that we talk about often is the trust, respect, and responsibility. And giving the high school the opportunity to explore on how to get more people to come to their open house, I think they did an incredible job. There are many other great things that are happening in the district, but I wanted to go back and celebrate where they took it to another level by having open house at the game. We had some great visitors from Northmont, and those visitors said they were absolutely amazed about an open house event combined with a first football game. They'd never heard of it before, and I believe that they're going to try to replicate that in the future. So please give a lot of kudos to the high school people for having the creativity and the insight, and they worked so cohesively together, great team of people to make that great thing happen. So, and then of course, August 31st is the Superintendent's State of Schools. We will begin promptly at 6, and it will end promptly at 7 o'clock. All right.
Thank you, Superintendent. We will move right into 8.0.
8.02 is a summer school report, and that will be presented by Ms. Roselle and Dr. Ragland.
Is it on? Oh.
Bear with us while we get through these technical difficulties. This is a change of location tonight, so this is normal.
Miss Denny, check and see if the clicker's on.
I don't think it is. Because it would be some light. It would be something in here if it was on. It's on. Battery maybe. Could it be the battery? Or am I pushing the wrong button? Or is using this arrow? This wouldn't be something in here. Yeah, we would see something. Here's your actual stuff. You've got the outgoing, the incoming's 1.4. Is that what you want? Incoming's 1.4.
Well, at the pleasure of the board, we can move on to section 9 of our agenda until we get these presentations up and going. Oh, hey, it was magic. Thank you. Okay. Manual clicking it is. Dr. Ragland and Miss Roselle, you have the floor.
Thank you. We had the awesome responsibility of being administrators during summer school. Myself, as well as Ms. Roselle, as well as the high school administration team. So we are here to report out about our summer school programs. So our secondary programs had the OGD prep. At the high school, we had 45 students, and approximately 37.7% of them completed or passed OGT tests. We had 47 students in Algebra 1 repeat credit. Almost 96% of them completed and passed their credit for Algebra 1. We also had virtual credit recovery. 28 students recovered a total of 45 courses.
When we moved to the middle school section, we did have 23 seventh graders that struggled, and we had some really, really bizarre circumstances, but we did have 95.6% pass and completion. Eighth grade, although they only had 9, that 77.7 looks awfully low. But we're going to talk to you about some recommendations and some of the things that we utilized over the summer that helped get those students over the hump.
So with our elementary intervention program, specifically third grade reading guarantee, we had 45 students who took the MAP test. Of those 45 students, 4 of those made the qualifying score. Of the Ohio State reading assessment, we had 47 students take that assessment. 13 of those students passed that assessment.
We had a total of 83 students in the program initially, and about halfway through, we received spring data from the state, and of those 83, actually 36 of them had already met the spring third grade reading requirements. And then of the 47 students who took the state assessment in reading, none of them were actually exempt. So they all needed to take and pass the test at that time. Now, I do want to mention that we have asterisk by 2 of the scores because we had one particular student who took both assessments and passed both assessments. But you only needed to pass one or the other.
Dr. Ragland, can you go back one slide and talk more about the 0 exemption?
So we had students who typically, if we have students who are on IEPs who have special needs, they would be exempt from third grade reading guarantee. At that time, we did not have any students who were exempt based on those circumstances. All of them needed to take the test at least once. And then we also had our Esl Enrichment program. We had a lot of students this year, a total of 64. This is our grade breakdown, kindergarten. Last year we had kindergarten through grade 6, so we have expanded. We had 5 7th grade students and 1 9th grade student this year.
All right, we talked about recommendations. We did things very differently this year. And to our surprise, we had some really, really good results as a result of it. Having communication blitz early for registration summer school at the beginning of March would make a difference, and we plan on doing that again in 2018. We want to provide more enrichment and tutoring opportunities. We think it would be very effective if we were to have 2 days for the Ohio State reading testing. We need to continue allowing leadership responsibilities to be split between the elementary and middle. We were together in one building, and high school ran a program on its own in their building, and that thing really, really helped us out. We need to continue utilizing the contracted services. Remember, I told you the numbers for middle school were very interesting. We did something creative. We contacted our service providers, and they said we never utilized them in the summer. So this summer, we utilized Talbot House, and we got some of those additional supports to get those students over the hump. We do need to make sure that we have school nurses on duty for those students that have those medical issues. It was a benefit, and we can't tell you how much it was for us to have security on staff with us this summer. Continue the full service summer meals program. That was a major, major benefit because the students that are doing the athletic programs, they made their way and utilized those meals. So that was really, really good.
And we had breakfast this year, which was a change from last year. So our students were able to eat breakfast as well as lunch. And so we had students from the community come in. I think one day Mr. Smith came in and said that there were 350 students who had benefited, from our students as well as the tutoring program in the school, as well as additional child care centers from the area and our athletes here at the high school as well. So it was extremely beneficial.
That concludes our report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, board colleagues?
I have a few.
Yes, Superintendent Smith, you have the floor.
Okay, the first, when you guys mentioned using Talbot House services, you mentioned that it was a beneficial investment. Go a little deeper into that.
There were students that were serviced by these people during the course of the school year.
Very good.
And they needed that continuation because they still struggled. So who's to say that they were going to be successful without that support? And I think having those people that they've dealt with during the school year raised a level of comfort for them. We had one young man that got transportation service. His worker would actually go pick him up in the morning, bring him to summer school, sit with him a little while, kind of talk to him, and just keep him on track because he had some issues that we could not fix. There were some medication issues with the mom. Mom could not get the medication. So this worker knew that situation from the middle school. So he knew, I got to go see mom in person. I got to go pick him up. I got to go wake him up. He knew exactly what to do for this particular student. So sometimes we have to just really think about what resources we have at our disposal. And if we're paying for them, we need to use them. And they were saying they've never been used in the summer before. So that's a lot of time that we didn't use them. So he was kind of glad that he had something to do, because he said ordinarily he would pass through and nobody would ask. So he didn't offer. And I was asking as a point of curiosity, and he said, yes, we're still under contract and we would be more than happy to come through and service our students.
2 more questions and then that's it. On the Algebra 1 piece, I have 2 questions. Do these students need remediation again for the next math rotation, the geometry, the Algebra 2? And then do these students graduate on time? So who's tracking to see when the kids come in and they need summer services, do they get back on track? Are they remediation free for the next rotation of math? And do they graduate on time?
So when they recover their Algebra 1 credit, yes, that helps them to become remediation free. So they're ready for the next level of course. And because we had such a number of students who passed, and I just want to add that in passing you only need a D, but I looked at the grade distribution and those students were not just passing with D's. We had several students who passed with B's as well as C's, and actually D's were the lowest grade of the combination of B's and C's. Of course, we just had a small couple who didn't quite make it, but they were even fewer. So I want to say that our students were very successful, and yes, we are monitoring them because we want them to be successful. And being able to recover that credit helps to put them back on track so that now they're ready for the next class that they have to take beyond Algebra 1.
So I wanted the board to understand that there's a very definite plan where students that are in summer sessions are focused on credit and not grades. So we want them to focus on credit and grades, because having D's all the way through a math rotation, it'll really destroy your GPA. So I'm glad that we're focused on both of those.
And we want to keep our students taking one math course at a time as much as possible. We don't want them in a makeup situation where they're, taking 2 classes and try to do both.
So math becomes your deficiency. You fail a course, and now in order to meet the graduation requirement, you're taking something that gave you, that you struggled in. You're taking 2 courses. That's pretty overwhelming.
Dr. Ragland, can you talk to us a little bit about what does the monitoring look like? So the student has gone through summer school, and now he's going into the next grade. What does that monitoring look like for that child so they don't slip?
So the monitoring is this. Our teachers are working now to create their common assessments in their courses, and they do use performance. And so in Performance Plus, they can enter or create those assessments, be they tests or quizzes, even exit slips. And so we can monitor students that way by standard. So we know what standards students have mastered and which standards they have not mastered. And so in addition, through some intervention in the classroom, teachers can give them that extra work. We can also look at MAP, and MAP by their MAP score. We monitor them 3 times a year, fall, winter, as well as spring, to keep on track with that. And so we know exactly a student's zone of proximal development, and we can assign them skill building materials and activities that way through Math Excel and other online programs that we have access to.
Well, it sounds like it's the framework of how you're not doing anything special for those students. That's just the way you do it for all students.
Yes.
Okay.
I just had a question. As far as the recovery, course recovery for middle school, what type courses were offered there? Or what type courses?
All of them. All.
So that would be English?
Math, social studies,
Okay.
English, social studies, science, math, and English. Yes.
Okay. And then just to refresh our memories, we had the high school courses were held here at the high school for high school age. And then at the intermediate building for other grades, just to remind how we had it divided up?
Yes, so we had high school courses here at the high school, and then ESL, third grade reading guarantee, and middle school courses were at the intermediate school.
Okay.
Yes, several years ago, me, Dr. Holden, and Mr. Denny saw that there were some discrepancies in the middle school, and the coursework says that there was a process that says students could only take 2 courses in the summer. Well, if you struggled with 3, then you were automatically going to be retained in the same grade. So we made some changes, and we started using a tracking document that says we're going to monitor your progress, and we're only going to look at the standards that you failed, because you really can't teach a full course in the summer. So we started looking at what standard did you struggle in, and we found out students were able to take more than 2 courses in order to make it through. So it was a very differentiated instructional process that really helped our kids make it.
And did we do that last year as well in the summer, or is this something new for this past summer? Like, do you have anything to compare it to?
So last year, we did do it. We looked at standards that students have mastered, but I think we had a greater focus this year, a better strategy for doing that. Last year, it was by hand. Teachers, contacting teachers and asking them what they thought a student needed, versus this year, we could go straight to performance and look that up and be more precise. We could also use MAP scores, and that was the primary way of deciding that and being precise in what a student needed.
So imagine scaling this down to the primary buildings. And one of the things that the public needs to understand is you're not really being prepared for the third grade guarantee when you get in third grade. You start preparing for the third grade guarantee when you first enter school. And we could see some of the students had some deficiencies early on. And so it comes to be true. The deficiencies you had are the same deficiencies you had when you didn't pass the third grade guarantee. So we become more focused and more determined. We're trying to figure out how to get you the remediation and acceleration services so that when you struggled as a first grader, we try to deal with those issues so that when you take the third grade guarantee, you're more successful. We're not waiting until third grade.
I wanted to applaud that because I'm excited to hear the results from next year, how those students perform this year, how well it's aided them in being successful this upcoming school year.
Could you answer a question for me regarding the elementary intervention programs? With the MAP testing, you said the total number of students were 45, and the number of students meeting the third grade requirement was 4. So what is in place to help I guess that's 41 students that are sitting out there?
So we have intensive enrichment that we offer to our students. We're obligated to do it. The state requires us to do it during the school day as well as after school. And so that's what's going to happen for those students this coming year.
Does that involve parental involvement if they have to stay after school for that, or is it done during the school day?
Well,
Everybody?
they have access to both, but yes, it is done during the school day primarily.
Okay.
Dr. Holden,
Yeah, sorry.
you want to answer more on that?
For the students who do not make it, their whole instructional day is changed to support them. So it really is intense. The Ohio Department of Education puts out some pretty strict guidelines about what you should do for children who do not make it. And so we do a very good job of following that, but also for these children and others. So we have these children who did not make it. Now we have a new crop of third graders, right? So as we go along and kind of benchmark their academic progress, we can see that maybe they need some extra support. So then through outside tutor partners, students have options of attending tutoring after school.
Okay, so how does that work, I guess, for like the children that did not pass the third grade reading guarantee? So are they like half fourth graders and half third graders? I mean, how does that work? I mean, because they didn't pass reading, but they passed everything else. So, or did they? I don't know. I guess that's the question.
So the state allows you to do that. In their wisdom. You can be in a 3-4 split. So what that means is they get third grade instruction in reading and fourth grade instruction and everything else. They take the third grade test in reading, and then mid-year, and there are certain dates, should they pass it, they can then be promoted to fourth grade, where they would then subsequently take the fourth grade test. It's not the best for children.
Right.
So we have been actively discussing that. I will tell you, we do have a 3-4 split class this year. And I will tell you that some students were, who did not make it, were just fully retained. And that was based upon consultation between the building administration and the parents. So I think as we look over time, you know, our data, we have to decide what's right for these children. And this is such an important foundation. What are we doing really? Even though the law says we can put them in this class, you know, we have to think, is that best for them? And so we've had long and deep discussions about
Does
this.
that automatically put the student on an IEP if they're retained? So
Has
they're just
absolutely
retained?
nothing to do with an IEP.
Okay.
So, and there are certain, I think Dr. Ragland alluded to it, there's certain requirements, if you will, for students on IEPs. In terms of testing, there are certain requirements for our English learners based upon years in the country and English proficiency level, which is determined by their results of the OELPA. So it gets pretty complex.
Yeah, keep in mind, some of our students coming to third grade is their first educational experience. When they come from other countries, they've never had a formal educational experience before, and we're still holding them to the same standards. So we have to get them services very, very quickly in order for them to meet it.
Is there any breakdown on whether the 41 students that did not pass the third grade guarantee, whether they were second language like ESL students as opposed to?
I think there are some ELs in there. We can get you the exact statistics.
I'm just
but
kind of curious. I mean, because
is
third
there a
grade is
pattern?
one grade, yeah. But
No.
yeah, what are we? You know, what can we do to?
I think one thing to note that hasn't been said is that the state changed their cut score from last year to this year. So that's one of the reasons why we have a larger number of students.
Okay.
This year, the cut score was 44. Last year, the cut score was 42. And what you can't see here, but there has been, even through the students' test scores, you know, either they passed or they didn't pass, but they made tremendous growth during the summer. 2/3 of those students, you know, gained anywhere from 4 points to 12 points. And so what does that mean? I mean, 4 points, it means that they grew a year. So tremendous growth.
So you don't see that in these numbers here. So, okay, thank you.
I think the team has worked, especially Mrs. Martin and her team. I think they've worked very, very hard to articulate that to parents. And I think the more communication, the better communication we have, the more at ease parents are. How is my kid growing? How are they progressing? We didn't hit the mark, but we're getting closer to it.
I have a question. So if you have a 3-4 split and you have students that are in the third grade and you work with them and
Third grade
ideally,
reading.
we're trying to move them to the fourth grade, correct?
Third grade reading.
Third grade reading.
That's what's
So they do
confusing.
what they need to do to pass and get to the fourth grade. How should I think about the fourth grade is already going on? They're doing their thing. So now the student passes.
That's
Are they left behind, or how do we catch them up, or how should I think about that?
Well,
I know
If
you
I
said
knew-
there's
if
some
I knew,
challenge-
I'd tell you, but-
Let me say one thing. Here's a problem, and I think Ms. Ruggles has an excellent question. The state of Ohio says you can do it, but the reality is there are some struggles with that. So they came up with a good plan on paper. The reality is when you're putting a kid through that gamut, it's really rough because what you're struggling with, I just have the fundamental belief, if I'm struggling in reading, I am struggling in science, I'm struggling in social studies, I'm struggling in every one of those content. So the 3-4 split, and I think we're using something more practical in our work, the 3-4 split is a feel-good thing for them, but it catches up with you when you don't do it. I mean, we're doing it with as much fidelity as we can, but imagine what's going to happen. The kid is in a 3-4 split, so you pass the assessment at the latter part of the year, and then the next year you go to a different building. You go to 5th grade. That's huge.
Right. So it almost is like they skipped, or they
Almost.
missed half of the 4th grade because they were getting instruction in the 3rd grade.
Yeah, but some educators out there say 3-4 is so close together. I don't believe that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have it 3-4.
Right. 4th
And
grade,
my
very
question was, I was trying to see if that's where you were kind of going with
Yeah.
that. It's not necessarily the best, but we're trying to come up with a plan to make it work for the kid, for
Right.
the
You know,
children.
we have a very strong teacher doing this, so I have great confidence in her. I think, you know, my background is literacy, so while 3 and 4 aren't the same, there are a lot of similarities. So if you have a teacher who's really on it and really teaching 4th grade, you know, social studies and math and science, you know, they wouldn't be teaching all that, then I think you can mitigate a little bit the situation the student would be in.
Thank you. Oh, my last question, and this might be for board members. I noticed that our presentations are different. Can we get an update so
Yeah.
that it
It seems
matches?
as if the presentation that we have on board docs is not updated for the one that you have up there.
Yeah, so if we can get a copy of that.
Or just make sure it's uploaded to board docs, that would be great. Okay, any further questions for Dr. Ragland or Ms. Rozelle or Dr. Holden? All right, thank you, ladies. We will move into 8.03, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, our open enrollment numbers, we are currently at 189 open enrolled students, which is a revenue of $1.4 million. So I think Mr. Seymour gave that in his report. But what I wanted to do is give you a comparison between what the enrollment numbers meant and also what the dollars mean. So there are approximately 189 students that are open enrolled in the district.
1.4 million, you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this, board colleagues?
Is this about the same as last year, or has it increased the number of open enrollment, or
We still have some students that are trying to enroll, and so we don't have it all the way, but this is our current. So it's a little up, it's up a little bit from last year.
Okay, we will move into 8.04, Superintendent, the IDEA.
Yes,
Budget.
the Director of Student Services and Dr. Holden.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And you do not have this, so I apologize.
So our presentation overview is going to cover the special education report card, the fiscal year 2017 budget, the current fiscal year 2018 budget, and public participation and comments. We'll leave that for questions. So this is information in general. Did you know about 1 in every 5 people have a learning disability? Approximately 1 million children ages 6 to 21 have some form of a learning disability and receive special education services in school. The IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is the federal special education law that requires public schools serves the learning needs of students with disabilities. IDEA requires that schools provide special education services to eligible students per a student's IEP. And so this is our report card that I will be covering. It will cover 9 indicators. This is an annual rating for every public district in Ohio, and we are required to give this information every year. The Ohio Department of Education uses this data submitted through the Education Management Information System, which is known as EMIS in our world. These data result in 1 of 4 ratings. They vary from either meets requirements, needs assistance, needs intervention, or needs substantial intervention. Our district for 2017 special education rating, we met requirements. So that's awesome. So special education report card for Winton Woods, again, 9 indicators. The first indicator, 4B, disproportionality, discipline, discrepancies by race or ethnicity, suspensions and expulsions that were greater than 10 days in a school year. Our target was less than 3.5. Our results were less than 2, which means we earned 4 points, which is the maximum points we can earn. Indicator 9, disproportionality for all categories, disproportionate representation of racial and ethnic groups in special education. Our target again was less than 3.5. Our results were less than 2, and we earned a total of 4 points, which is the maximum allowed. Indicator 10, disproportionality, specific disability categories, disproportionate representation of racial and ethnic groups in the category of specific learning disability. Our target was less than 3.5, our results were less than 2, and we earned the maximum points of 4. Indicator 11, timely initial evaluations, percent of students who were evaluated within 60 days of parental consent. On time, we had 64 out of 65, or 98%. I would just like to note that that 64 came from another district. So we received documents that were already out of compliance. So we had no control of that, but unfortunately, we took the ding. However, we did receive a maximum points of 4. Indicator 12, early childhood transition from Part C to Part B. Percent of children referred from early intervention services and found eligible for preschool with an IEP before the age of 3. And what that means, I don't know if you are familiar with Help Me Grow agencies like that. 100% were on time, so we received maximum points of 4. Indicator 13, secondary transition. Percent of youth with IEPs that have transition goals and services implemented before age 14. 100% on time. We earned 4 points, maximum allowed. The next indicator, timely correction of noncompliance. No late or uncorrected findings. Received a total maximum of 4. Timely and accurate data. Data was valid, reliable, and timely. Again, earned maximum of 4 points. And IDEA audit findings, no audit findings. Again, maximum points of 4. So again, we met requirements. The maximum total points we can receive is 36, with 9 indicators, 4 points per indicator, and overall, our district received 36, which is the maximum allowed.
I have one comment.
Yes.
It's a tremendous amount of work. However, one of the safeguards that we have to have as a district, when other districts see that we are maxing out our numbers and getting a perfect score, they encourage people to come to Winton Woods City Schools. So we have to be very aware
What's
of
the
that.
burden, the financial burden that we would bear?
Depending
for
on what their
that?
disabilities are.
Yes, that's what I was just kind of saying.
Yes.
So, great job.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
job.
you.
But
Any questions, comments?
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you briefly about the money. So, IDEA is federal law, and we get federal funds, which we call our IDEAB funds. So you can see over time from fiscal year 08 to 18, kind of the up and down allocation of federal funds for IDEA. So last year, fiscal year 17, we had $924,983, and this year a slight increase to $964,389. Okay, and there you see it. So I'm going to briefly show you these graphs that Mr. Denny had for last year, just as a point of comparison. So I'm going to show it to you two ways, by function and by object, and these are accounting terms that Mr. Seymour says you need to use.
What you buy and what you use it for.
Thank you.
What are you buying and what are you using it for?
So here's what we're
What are you buying?
here's what we're buying last year. So it's broken out that way. You can go to object, what we use it for. So last year, again, mainly we use our IDEA funds for people. That's the bulk of the money. Okay. So here in fiscal year 2018, so we are using $760,000 for instruction, which is about just shy of 79% of our allocation. Then we have 28,546. That is our indirect cost. So our indirect cost is set by ODE, and it, correct me if I'm wrong, really is the cost of managing the money. So 63,492 is our non-public. For us, we have one, John Paul II. 78,289 is governance and administration, and that is really about just about 8%. So let me go back. Non-public is about 6.6%, and then indirect's about 3%. So our governance is our special ed. I'm not sure what her title is. Administrative assistant that handles all of the IEP compliance pieces, which, as you can see from Ms. Bray's portion of this, is critical. So critical. And then 34,062 are support services, which we use actually to pay for part of one of our school psychologists. So by object, you see 602,979 for salaries, then a significant portion for retirement and fringe benefits related to that, 235,310. Purchase services, 97,554. Again, that's a combination of the non-public and the support services, and then 28,546 is other, which is our indirect cost. So, questions, comments, input for either myself or Mrs. Bray?
As far as the increase year from last year to this year, is that attributed to a greater amount coming from the federal government or more students that are, I already kind of know the answer, but I was hoping more money was coming from the
Yeah,
federal
they don't
government?
know, Ms. Coon, they don't know how many students we're gonna have. So it's money coming from the Fed because some students haven't even been identified yet.
Okay, so that's allocations, so that, is that, do you
I don't,
anticipate that to go up?
do they look at, or what do you, 2 years in arrears, as I say? Okay, 2 years in arrears.
Okay, well,
There's
it
a
seems like
lot,
it was
there's a
going back
lot
up,
to learn
trending
with
up.
all of this. But you can see how it's, you know, which probably kind of corresponds to obviously our population.
Okay, any further questions or comments? All right, thank you, Dr. Holden and
Thank
Mrs.
you,
Bray.
thank you so much.
Okay, Superintendent, we will move into 8.05.
Yes, we'll have the report from Mrs. Denny, Community Engagement and Public Relations Coordinator.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. We just wanted to take a few minutes to share where we are with our new tech launch. And from our new tech timeline, you can see that for the 2017-18 school year, we are right on time. We are launching our preschool through grades 4, so that affects our primary buildings as well as our elementary. And then we're also through our teaching and learning department, providing our staff with professional support. So to support this phase, we're going to be relaunching our 8-week rollout that we launched about a year and a half ago. We're going to tweak it just a little bit, but we're going to launch it again for our new families and parents and community. So basically talking about what New Tech is, why New Tech, and then the 4 pillars that New Tech has. As a communications team, when we launch any communication, we use the concentric circles approach. So we always start with our superintendent. He vets and gives us feedback on our information. Then he presents it to the board. Then it goes to our executive team, administration, staff, students and parents, and then to our community. One way that we're continuing to support our staff is through our Warrior project-based learning process. This is our own process. We created this process about 2 years ago with the input of our staff and the teaching and learning department, as well as some students. And we created a sticker that our staff could either put on their desk, they could put it on their computer, but really is a great reference specifically for our teachers that are new to PBL, so that they could always have that tool, that resource right there, that quick resource to rely on. Also, to support our parents and our community, we have created a project-based learning brochure. And with this brochure, it has been sent to, and I believe already the community, if our community has not received it yet, 1 per household, then it will be this week, but I'm pretty sure it's already out there. Within this, and the funds used to print this were from Title I funds. So this project-based learning brochure is to help our community and parents understand the learning outcomes and attributes that our students acquire as they mature through the process. The teaching and learning department broke it into 4 categories: pre-K through 4, and then grades 5 and 6, 7, 8, and 9 and 12.
Ms. Denny, can you speak a little bit about where this came from? I know this was one of your ideas, but where was this born from?
So I believe this is the 4th year that we want to showcase the district.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, we've done that through a quality report. This is really, for this year, has taken the place of the quality report, because this is who we are right now. We are wall-to-wall, as of this year, project-based learning district. So this is specifically provided to support our teachers, specifically our families and our community, to understand what project-based learning really is. So as we communicate to our stakeholders, we want to leverage every single tool that we have at our disposal. And as you know, we have a One Call Now system that allows us to disperse voice phone calls, as well as text messages and emails. We also have social media that we use consistently, as well as our website that we recently redesigned. The website's an important tool. It's a window to the district, so it's a really important tool as well. Something new to our communication tools is our Supercast from our superintendent. It's our podcast. It's called Warrior Supercast. It's a monthly podcast that really allows us the opportunity once a month to talk to our community about what's going on in the district. And you'll be seeing over the next few months, we are really going to focus on those new schools that are launching this year. We're going to have them talk about what's going on. What does it look like? What are your challenges? What are your triumphs? So we're going to make sure that we utilize that. Another way that we're supporting our parents are through student project exhibitions. Every single school has a date of a project exhibition, and this is really important. As parents are told about projects, they're seeing their students come home and work on projects. It's different when you see them present it. And we want to give them an opportunity to know what does it really look like? What do the projects really look like? So not just our parents, but of course our community will be invited to these exhibitions. And of course for this year, we are again having a district showcase where our students will be able to showcase their most exciting projects at the Freedom Center. This was very successful last year. It actually has the exact same date, March 22nd. For this coming year, we had over 1,000 people in attendance that did not include our students and staff. That was all visitors. So we're very excited to be able to provide this opportunity for our community again. One last thing that we are beginning to work on is something called Warrior Experts. This is going to be a database, and I will tell you this, I think this is going to take some time to develop, but it's a database for our community, for our alumni, for adults in the area that are willing to share their skills with our students. Our teachers, how I view it is our teachers will be able to go and look up certain skills, certain maybe jobs, and then to be able to call on those adults to then come and work on a project with students. So that's really the next level of projects and where we want to go. So we're excited to kind of start this database of true engagement and bringing projects to an even higher level. So thank you so much. Any questions?
Can you go back to the slide with the dates on it?
Sure.
Thank you.
And these are all all on our website.
Will the events be held at each of the corresponding schools?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the high school actually had their first one, and I don't have their dates, but they have a couple more coming up this school year. But we will definitely advertise those as well.
Just a comment, it would be great if maybe the principals could send the board a meeting invite, because sometimes we get so busy and trying to manage so many different things. The calendar invite would be good.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing that I wanted to say. The other thing is the Warrior Experts. I think that is an awesome idea. One of the things that I've heard over the years and have experienced it is saying, oh, I want to be involved, I want to help, and not get a call back. And that's
Right.
something that I always hear from the community, that I've reached out, but no one has gotten back to me. Now, that was previously, so I don't know what it is now, but I think this database is a great opportunity to answer that question for many individuals who say they want to participate and get, you can collect the data so that you can field them out to the areas of where we might need them. The brochure, I think, is an excellent, it's quality, it's good, it provides balance in showing another dimension of Winton Woods City School District. And by balance, what I mean is sometimes at one point we had a lot of athletics.
Oh, right.
We had a lot of athletics, and the community was screaming for academics, and this screams right from the beginning, project-based learning, where we're going, and it helps, it's a good place for people to start to understand what Winton Woods is doing, and that's it, so.
Ms. Ruggles, I think that Ms. Denny and the Teaching and Learning Department worked really hard on this, simply because what people don't know is this is a recruiting tool, and it tells parents,
Yes.
this is what your child will actually, oh, yes, and the teachers, I'm sorry. But this is a recruiting tool, and I think it tells people exactly what your child is going to experience. Many districts don't do this because their vision is just for right now. We're talking about looking further down the road this is what your child will experience in pre-K and all the way up to grade 12. And it's a very comprehensive, it's small, but it's a very powerful document that gives you a real view. This is what PBL is going to look like for my child. So
It makes me proud to be able to give this to someone in the community. Just one other comment. Can you go back to the slide where you have the concentric circles? I want to make sure that I'm understanding this correct. It starts with the superintendent and it goes up. Why is the Board of Education on the fringes? That might be a Mr. Smith question.
It is.
what do you mean, the fringes?
Like where it says community and the Board of Education, because I know that we have more conversation earlier in the process.
We're in the second step.
Oh,
So
I-
you're in
Well,
two
okay.
you're in two
Wait, I
phases.
can't see.
So
Where's
we
the
have
other
those, we have the conversations,
My
and
glasses
then
aren't that
it gets
strong. I'm
vetted,
sorry.
and it gets vetted by the board. And then, as it goes through the process, the board gets a chance to engage with the community again. The
Right.
board is in two places. Ms. Denny was
Right.
very deliberate, putting the boards in two sections, because that's really how it does work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's appreciated because that is
Well, and if
very,
I,
very true.
and this is so
It
important.
is.
This
That's
is
why I
so
was
important to our
asking the
team.
question. I was like, wait a minute, I know we have conversation
Right.
with the
So, Ms. Ruggles, you
superintendent.
got all of your circles?
I don't,
Yes, you
I'm
do.
sorry, I literally cannot see that where it says Board
Well,
of Education.
and I think this is extremely important, and we have to be very intentional about it,
Yes.
because if we have information that goes to students and staff doesn't know about it, you
Right.
know, how do you feel as a teacher when my student is telling me when the exhibition is, or
Yeah.
whatever that piece of information is? So we're very intentional about rollout timing of information. And if I could add one more thing about the Warrior Experts, I think also we have, I think our first go-to is our community, but I also know that there's a lot of companies out there that part of the requirement for their employees is to have community service. So, if we could dig in and tap into more, bigger pools of people, oh my gosh, like that would be a
So
great
we were
add to our
creating
database.
the concentric circles. We had to look at it in real time. This is how it really does work.
Right.
And I think anybody could really follow it. When you look at our process, the process is really the steps that go into
Right.
making sure the community is engaged in everything that we do.
And that is greatly appreciated, as I mentioned earlier, because as everyone knows, we report to the community and we're held accountable by the
Yes.
community. So
We do know
to
that.
have, this concentric circle illustration really speaks volumes. And just to echo what Mrs. Ruggles said, this helps so much for us to take this to the community and spend time with them and tell them about this. So kudos about this. I was very delighted when I opened my mailbox and
So you did
found
get it.
one
Good.
in my mailbox. And then I was super excited. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at this. And I was like, wait a minute, how much did this cost? And then it's covered by Title I, so thank you.
It is covered by Title I, and the Teaching and Learning Department had a huge piece in that, obviously, so.
Yes, so kudos on this, and as well as the database for the Warrior Experts. I think that's going to be phenomenal.
Anything
Thank you
else?
for my 2 circles.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Denny. All right. How are we feeling? Do we need a refreshment break?
I'd like
A
to
comfort break before we move
I'd
into
like to do
8.06?
one more before we take a break. After
Okay.
this, if that's okay.
Yep, let's go ahead and go into 8.06 then.
Yes, Board, I would like to combine 8.06 with 9.01, so that it actually is in the same flow. So, Ms.
Okay.
Wilson? New hire.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Uploaded into Board Docs, you should have received a copy of the new hire report, and it basically just summarizes some of the hiring activity that we've been engaged in all summer long. We have basically hired 32 new teachers and 1 new AP.
that's new to the district. We actually have 2 new APs in the district. One was a teacher that was promoted, but we have one that's new to Winton Woods. And then you can see on the new hire report that it is, do you have it pulled up in board docs? Mm-hmm. Okay. You can see where they have been assigned and their average years of experience. District-wide, our new teachers have about close to 5 years of experience. Demographically, we have hired mostly females, which is not surprising. That's sort of traditional and it's a national trend. But you can also see that we've taken great strides to be as diverse as possible. We have several males that we've hired, which is a growing need in our schools, as well as we are also trying to be racially and ethnically diverse as well. And you can see the breakdown on the report there. The average salary district-wide for our teacher, based on roughly 5 years of experience, is $56,741. And that's based on the education and placement on the salary schedule. Finally, we have colleges and universities that are represented. So not only do we have racial and gender diversity and ethnic diversity, but we have some diversity in terms of geography and where people have attended school. So you can see that we've got a lot of in-state graduates, but we also have several that are out of state. We have a Harvard graduate with us, at Tennessee University, Miami University, Ohio State University. You can see the whole list. So we're very proud of our new teachers. We had a wonderful onboarding experience. We extended that this year several days as opposed to several hours. So do you have any questions about the new hire report?
I do have one question.
You do? Mm-hmm.
So you made reference to having the onboarding process for several days. Mm-hmm. Tell me the advantage.
Well, part of what we did, what we've been doing is surveys mid-quarter and twice a year of all of our new hires. And so Mr. Smith has asked me to personally go around and survey our new teachers to find out, were there obstacles to starting and feeling comfortable and feeling prepared as they started their jobs. And so consistently the feedback has been we just simply didn't have enough time to learn all of the Winton Woods stuff. Even some of the people that came with experience said, I had no idea. I didn't have time to learn, about your computer systems or when report cards are due, how to do discipline referrals, or, all about new tech and all of the district-specific initiatives. So it would be nice if we could have more of that. So we negotiated with our labor association an extension of the days that we're allowed to have new teachers, and it's without pay. So they volunteered their time to come in and learn about Winton Woods, so that they will be prepared for our students. So we were very appreciative of our new teachers for doing that, and also of our labor union for answering that call on behalf of students.
I have a question for you, Ms. Wilson. Is it now, or do we have to do it?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I see that we have 0 individuals that were hired under the Hispanic category. And I trust the process for the hiring, but is there any consideration given for any of these individuals who are hired who might speak Spanish or some of the other language, French?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, that is our Spanish-speaking students are our fastest growing demographic. So we are very intentional about looking for staff that is bilingual, and maybe next year I'll include on the report a list of the staff that is bilingual.
Okay.
While we haven't made great strides in our teaching staff or our certificated staff, where we've been very successful is recruiting staff, support staff that's bilingual. So we have ESL teachers that are bilingual. We have office staff that is also bilingual. And now we have the enrollment center registrar, the district registrar, who's bilingual. So we are trying, and that is something that we recognize as a growing need and a very critical need. But we haven't quite gotten there on the teaching side yet. But we are working on it, and I'll include that data next time I give you a report. Thank you.
What would be the other language? Would it be French? Or that would Nepali or?
Nepali's a growing area as well in Cincinnati, believe it or not. I'm not aware of a huge pool of Nepali speaking teachers, but that is a growing need, and we'll just have to try harder and keep looking. But
We're hoping when we really begin to launch our work with Mercy, that Mercy will have some Nepali-speaking people that will actually help begin to tutor our kids. So when you start vetting and working with large organizations, you can find other support people that you didn't even know that you would find. So that's the advantage of partnering with corporations.
And just as a safeguard, even though we don't have staff that speaks every language in the district, we subscribe to a service where if we have a family that's in need of interpretation, we can call a phone number. Each building has a code, and they can get an interpreter online, and there's virtually every language. Steve could probably tell you the ones that we don't have. But we can get interpretation services for our families. So that's our safeguard in the event that.
I'm sorry.
That's
Or
good.
we can leverage our warrior experts to see who might speak those languages that we can leverage.
I think the other resource that we have available, we're really pushing this trust, respect, and responsibility, and I think our students could actually help us with our own work.
That would be good. That's good.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? All right.
We've combined,
9.01.
yeah, 9.01.
Okay. 9.01 is a job description for a lead security monitor. This position grew out of a need that occurred last school year, actually, to hire a lead security monitor because we lost all of our, I shouldn't say lost, but we had incapacitated security monitors, as well as we lost one of our most veteran security monitors to another district. He went to work in the district where his son attends school, and he also coaches. So what we realized is we didn't have a security expert while we had security monitors. We didn't have anyone that had the managerial or quasi-managerial side to security. So we posted last summer, hired an individual who has a lot of security experience through Children's Hospital, where he's responsible for the security team for Children's as well as for his church. His name is Raison Zion, and so what I asked him to do is to take the year and observe and then make recommendations. And so that's exactly what he did. In fact, Steve and I were joking. Every time we saw him, he kind of would flag us down in the hallway with wanting to talk about, ways to enhance security. So what he did at the end of the school year is he came to me with a report and a proposal, and he just demonstrated a lot of initiative. Based on that, the building principals, Mr. Denny and I met, and we fine-tuned the lead security monitor job description, and that's what you have before you. It gives him, he's not quite administrative, he's still in the OPSI bargaining unit, but what it does is it allows him to be, for us to take something off the plate of assistant principals. The chain of command, however, will still remain principal, where there's an assistant principal, and then Mr. He's got two first names, I'm sorry, it's Raison Zion. So Mr. Zion will then be kind of the liaison and the facilitator for all of the security monitors. He will also assist the business manager in some of the growing federal and state regulations around safety and security as it relates to the emergency crisis management and some of the things in facilities. And then he's also going to be a presence at some of our buildings that don't currently have security monitors, but do need to have security protocols and, safety audits and things like that. Have any questions?
I do. Is this a person that already has this role that's employed, and this is a full-time position?
Yes, so we hired last summer, and he took the year and just observed and then made a recommendation, and so we're now updating his job description.
Okay.
Because it's a new role, but not a new position.
Okay.
He was with us last school year.
Okay.
So another question I have, so the person that Raison Zion, he's actually currently working in the position, and all of the other security that we would have throughout all of our buildings sort of report to him, or no? He's like the lead, so do they report to him?
He's quasi administrative, so he is not paid as an administrator, and he does not evaluate. What he does is he creates schedules and plans. He vets those through the principal and assistant principals, and then if they are comfortable, then they then delegate kind of the execution of those plans to him.
Okay.
And so he's kind of the point person for administrators. And he also is charged with, arranging professional development for our security monitors. That is something that we, to be honest, haven't done a good job with over the years, and that's something he brought to my attention. He has connections through Children's and some of the organizations he belongs to, where he can have our security monitors go to, restraint training or, escort training, or search and seizure training and things like that, so that we can just stay current in our practices around student monitoring.
Any further questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and do the motion for 9.01.
We were a little ahead. We don't need a motion for 8.06?
No.
Okay. Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the job description for the lead security monitor as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion or further discussion or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Mrs. Douglas?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. Kim?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and we will take a 5-minute recess while we get set up for 8.07. We will go ahead and resume our regular meeting where we left off, and we are at 8.07. Superintendent Smith.
Mr. Denny?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Good evening, Board. I will be pleased to present this evening an update to the Board. The last communication we had about this formally in session was June. So this will just be an update to the June. It's not as comprehensive as June was, but it does sort of brief the Board on anything that's changed between now and then, or things that have become more clear since that time. So we'll touch on the 3 basic pieces of any project and managing successfully any project, which is the scope, the cost, and the schedule. So we'll start with project scope updates. First, we want to be sure we let the Board know that the educational visioning document has been received by the district. This is the product, the work product from the February and March experience that we had. If you recall, the meeting's actually in this room. Did you all receive a copy of that yet? Okay. We'll make sure that you get a copy of it
Already has your documents.
Oh, okay.
so that you can see the
Behind it, it's a real formal.
finished product.
Okay.
So in terms of update, a lot of the other things that, again, we've mentioned before are still within that document, but there were 4 themes that emerged from analyzing all of the student-driven input as well as the information vetted by our community with our various meetings that we held. We held six meetings, 3 with students and 3 with all stakeholders in the evening with community members, students, and so forth, staff. So the 4 themes emerged from this, and I think what you'll see is as we get more into design and we start seeing actual schematic documents and things of that nature, you'll start to see these themes emerge, which is theme of show and tell, community and culture, eat and learn, and inside and outside. And these are sort of fairly unique when in this combination with Winton Woods. at least according to our architectural firm that has built hundreds and hundreds of buildings over the years, and many of them in Ohio, most of them in Ohio. But show and tell is very much a part and parcel of project-based learning, and in particular, the New Tech Network's flavor of project-based learning. It's facilities that actually empower creation, presentation, and curation. So they have spaces. For instance, the document that some of you labeled your computers with tonight, and some of you have this sticker. When you look at the cell 2 and 3, we've, through some analysis and discussion, discovered that about 70 to 75% of our kids' time lives in those zones 2 and 3, which is the pathway portion of the project-based learning process. So as a result, our facilities have to enable that. So a big chunk of our facility design has to empower kids in those modes. Community and culture, supporting both small groups and bringing the community into our buildings is another theme that emerged. Eat and learn is this idea of distributing dining. If you think about a cafeteria, it's usually about 6,000 to 7,000 square feet that's used how often? Maybe once or twice a day for a portion, 2 or 3 lunches. In a 7-hour school day, you're using it maybe for 2 hours. That's about 28% usage rate? It's pretty bad. So what if you took that space and divided it up and distributed it to put it very close to where kids learn? So then they use that space to eat when it's appropriate, but also to learn, which they can leverage all the time, the whole day. So that's a theme I think you'll see emerging. And then inside and outside, this connection, Mr. Smith?
Mr. Denny, talk a little more about that. The prep space would still have to be authentic, though.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would not forego a cafeteria, a kitchen, a prep kitchen. The most efficient way to prep food is to have a central kitchen with all the right equipment. These would be warming containers, coolers, things that, basically so you could vend or serve, but not necessarily prep.
Right.
So,
very good.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. So this idea of inside and outside also, that the students brought up repeatedly and the community verified this, that getting outside is really important, even if it's only for a moment. But if you can get outside and learn, it's really powerful. Adds context, generates interest, things that help kids achieve and grow. So what would this look like if we really meant it? This slide is not an update, so I'm not going to spend much time on it. But these are the pieces we've already touched on that through our visioning, we've basically been able to translate what we think education needs to be for the foreseeable future and what the facilities need to exhibit in order to capture that and support it fully. So again, I'll move right through that because we have touched on it before and you have it before you in the presentation. We'll make sure this is posted online as well for people to reference as an update. Really important in terms of scope is how big these buildings are. It's directly connected to the cost and the schedule. But one of the things we're monitoring very closely is enrollment projections. The whole facility process is based on how many students you have at a given time. So in 2022, 2023, OFCC projected we would have 3,515 students. Right now, we're over 3,800. I don't have an exact count because we're so early in the school year. The enrollment numbers are very fuzzy right now because we're verifying who's present and who's not, who's actually in our rosters. But in February, we were at 3,854, which is the last sort of official dipstick that I was able to gather. It included 100 students at the Oaks system and about 100 students on didn't include 100 students on a preschool waiting list, but did include approximately 200 open enrolled students, which were very near that number again already this early in the school year. So all that to say, we're concerned. So we've approached the commission and they have agreed to conduct another enrollment study and then feed that data to their statistical analyst, who will then formulate new enrollment projections. We're looking for a delta of 350. If we get a difference, so basically 3,515, if it goes up 350 students, which is we don't know. We'll have to see what the data bears because they analyze everything, birth rate, cohorts, national trends, all kinds of different pieces of data they pull in to create the enrollment projection. But that would signal a new segment, possibly from the commission. So that would be something to talk about.
You know, I think that that report that you came back with Mr. Denny is very comprehensive, but they did look at birth rate, they looked at trends, they looked at transition, but they didn't actually look at a reform of a program that's meeting the needs of the community. They don't do that work.
No, so all-day kindergarten and all-day
No.
preschool, they didn't factor in at all.
Right.
Yeah. So they're looking at some macro
Yep.
studies, but not necessarily down to the micro level, which arguably they should. By the way, just a reference point, there are acronyms. The acronym buster is at the bottom. So if you're concerned about a bunch of letters being thrown around, hopefully it's at the bottom. New safety requirement, I wanted to make the board aware of this. We just learned about this. Apparently in June, the state of Ohio passed a new safety requirement that requires all new buildings built after June to incorporate what's called a storm shelter or emergency shelter. So it's a fantastic idea. We have no idea how much this is going to cost yet, but it's definitely going to cost. We'll change scope, which will influence cost. But part of what we do know about it is it has to accommodate all occupants, has to be able to survive structural impacts, and it has to be able to withstand a class F5 tornado wind speed, which is greater than hurricane force. So if you're familiar with building buildings in Florida, this school will have to be built, at least a portion of it, that can house about 2,000 people. So all the occupants plus the staff, students and staff, probably 2,100 people, against forces that are greater than a hurricane force, which is F5 tornado. So it is yet to be determined what the impact will be. There will be an impact in the cost from this.
Mr. Denny, any schools in this area that have the F5 tornado wind speed rating?
Absolutely not.
Right.
No, I don't think there's probably some buildings in the state that have it, but they're probably defense related.
Yeah.
Is my guess. I don't know that for sure. But
No
that'd be my
schools.
guess. No schools.
Right.
So this is a new requirement
Just came
that is
out.
just.
Brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
OFCC.
it could be the basement. No.
That's an option, but it'd be a basement to
secure
help.
space that people can fit into,
Right.
and you have to make sure there is no
No
glass,
windows and-
there are
yeah.
there are no major beams that can actually
Fall
cave in.
over,
It's a very sophisticated thing. They must have had something happen like this, that now they put it into place when we're ready to build, which ours will be state-of-the-art with
Yeah.
all the amenities, so
Yeah.
it's not a bad deal. But it will cost more for some reason.
The first attempt by the architect at wrestling with this is some sort of recessed gymnasium, so it sinks down into the ground. So if you've seen, like the Cintas Center, when you see that recess down,
I see.
that's an option, but then the walls around it have to be able to withstand that kind of wind speed. And so the height of the building becomes a big concern, because the bigger that wall is, the more area it covers, the more wind resistance it creates, and the more engineering it takes to keep it
Right, to
up
keep
during
it-
that kind of an event. So LEED Platinum, I wanted to make sure we updated the board on our pursuit of the LEED Platinum goal. It's very important. It came out in almost all of our community engagement events when we talked about facilities with the community. Being green was important. The students reinforced this. They feel it's appropriate and important to operate in an environmentally friendly capacity, both as the building is built and in operating the building. So this is actually some concrete data from our eco-charrette, which is a new term I learned this year. It is French. It's basically a roundtable discussion around, in this case, the ecosystem, so environmental design. And LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And there's 110 possible points you can earn on a 2009 LEED rating system, which is the system that we're on for the design of these new schools. And after a lot of discussion, and I believe it was 7 or 8 hours in meetings, Mr. Smith, I believe, we came up with things that we thought we could do, and this is before we've costed them out, so just that's important to understand. Some of them cost almost nothing. Others will have other costs associated with them. But we came up with basically 66 and 67 for the two different campuses that we thought we could commit to as a system from an operational standpoint. 34 and 35 that we thought maybe we could do, and then there were 9 that were like, we're not doing that kind of asphalt. We can't even figure out how to snowplow that, so we're not going to be able to do it. Another part of the country maybe, but not here. The LEED certification levels are also shown in the chart. Platinum requires 80 points, so you have to earn 73% of the points, and this is set by a council, the Environmental Green Building Council, U.S. Green Building Council. Right now we're at 67. We need to pick up about 13 or 14 more in order to hit LEED Platinum.
So we're at gold.
We're already at gold, actually. And there are only three school facilities in the state that are platinum. So it's extremely difficult to attain. It takes a lot of willingness to operate differently, which we definitely see in our team, in our community. I think would accept that. What does this give the district? Well, one, it gives you efficiency in design and operations, so that saves dollars operating the building. Secondly, it gives you market advantage. When only 3 buildings in the state out of 3,000 schools in the state, so that's less, what is that, 1/10 of 1%? Our LEED Platinum, that gives us a market advantage. And finally, it reinforces values that already exist in our community, that value being environmentally responsible.
That platinum process also will probably generate where you have about 350 visitors a year, because they want to see how you reach platinum status,
right,
and how efficient this building is.
Yeah, that's great exposure.
Absolutely.
For the system. So the categories are also shown that contribute to LEED, if you're interested in what kinds of things these are. Update on the proposed K6 building site. This is very notable. Wanted to be sure the board was aware that in June when we presented, we were actually looking at, and I'll point to it, a campus right here. This is where we would build. Right about where you see the word Greenbelt appearing was what we affectionately called Site 2. Site 3 was where the ball diamond is, down lower to the left. Thanks, Mr. Smith. And then Site 1 is where the track is shown, and it's highlighted in this picture, this aerial shot. So what we discovered in researching the site is Green Hills has actually in their very village charter the existence of Greenbelt zoned land. It's intended to basically wrap the village in a shield, a bubble of green space, so that there could be no development there, and it would preserve basically the nature, kind of the pristine nature, the connection to nature of the village. So I've actually tried to draw it in there. You can see the green belt zoning boundary. It's very close to the building, and we cannot actually build within the green belt. So it's a significant development that basically caused us to move away from sites 2 and 3 and back towards Site 1. Site 1 is by no stretch of the imagination a bad site. It's a good site. It actually will take very little development, but it's a little tighter. So it does present, there's some trade-offs. It still allows ease of access and site development. It still contributes to site safety. We can still sequester it from the building. It's got a connection to nature. You can see there's some trees that can be connected to in a meaningful way, architecturally, which will enable some of that outdoor education we talked about that our kids value, and it reinforces our vision. And it still eliminates swing space, which has become a very important topic of conversation. That's not good for families. There are families that would probably look at swing space as a negative. There are definitely staff members that would look at it as a negative. So we don't want to have Ms. Wilson have to go out and recruit more high-quality teachers. If this is something we can avoid, we should. The original plan actually called for us back in 2011 to build right on top of the school. But in order to do that, we'd have to move the children out and the staff out to the community building, which is less than ideal. We could fit our school in there, but it would require a lot of disruption. There are quite a few organizations in that building. There are longtime community partners and even a new community partner like the Hamilton County Greater Cincinnati Public Library. So we would not want to disrupt what we view as very successful partnerships.
Mr. Denny,
Sir.
Approximately how much do you think it would take, just an estimated average, to get the community building ready for 600 kids?
Talk about cost?
Yes.
I think we'd spend between 50 and 100,000 easy.
Yeah.
And that's not really pulling into account the labor we'd spend moving. We'd have to pull in extra support to move that much.
So where's the cafeteria in that building?
It's in the basement, which is now our maintenance department.
Yep.
So we would be trucking food into there. We could make it work, but it wouldn't necessarily be easy. So.
And the gym seats, how many?
Gym seats about 375.
Okay.
Would be serving a school of 500 or 600. So you'd have to do eating in shifts in the gym, and there's some interesting logistics. Could it be made to work? Yes. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Wanted to be sure the board was aware of that. 712 remains unchanged, so again, no update here. Would point out again that our architects are still studying, as well as our construction management firm, whether or not we need the space that is currently occupied by our central office board office. So that is still under study. Very likely will end up being in the way. Preschool Village, I wanted to make sure we touched base on this. This is an update from the previous presentation, so a little more detail around this. Going back to here, if this is in the way, which we are suspecting it is, the central office right here, if that space needs to be reclaimed, there are 14 people that need to be relocated, and not far into the future, like pretty soon. So when you start looking at the logistics around that, this is a great piece of property. It is the second largest piece of land in the district. It's the intermediate school. We know that the preschool village is intended to be housed here. It's our best building. We'll touch on that in a minute in terms of ease of maintenance, current condition. So the preschool's housed in the building. We also have students in here. So the preschool can't occupy it until the 5th and 6th graders are not there. 5th and 6th graders have to stay there until the K-6 building is done. As you'll see later in the presentation, and you're probably all aware, that's projected to be December of 2020. So move in spring break 2021, which means we can't really do a lot there until 2021. But what we can do to get out of the way for progress that needs to occur on this site that we're on now for the 712 is relocate to the back of the building where there's ample space, and we could install a central office, basically modular complex. This is the most cost-effective option right now that we've been able to come up with for swing space for central office.
So I've reached my goal. I've always wanted to work in a modular.
Congratulations to all of us. So there are 3 options behind the school we would want to look at. It would involve some soil sampling just to make sure we've got the right density to put any footers into. Dropping in water lines. What's the cheapest water line connection? Where can we be most cost effective? So we'll study these sites and decide which would be the most cost effective, because we would only need this from 2018 to 2021, 2022. So.
Can I ask a quick question, Mr. Denny?
Absolutely.
If this happens with the modular units here in the back of IS, is there a plan to move all of the extracurricular activities that happen on that land currently?
Yes.
Okay.
We would have to develop that.
Okay.
And these are 3 different places it could go.
Mm-hmm.
Each of which is going to have to be studied from a feasibility standpoint.
Okay, so it's not all 3.
No, it's
either
one of
or.
those 3.
Okay.
Yeah, probably one of those triple wides would do it, but we have to research the market and see what type of office complex, modular complex would accommodate the needs of the district.
Mm-hmm.
And just for the sake of asking, what would be the contingency plan for that modular once the buildings were ready? What we do with it?
Well, my recommendation would not be to own it.
Oh,
Since this is
to
very
rent it.
short term, it would just be a lease, very similar to what we did at Primary North to accommodate all-day preschool. We pulled in 4 modular classrooms, and then when that building's ready to go, we just discontinue the lease. Meet the contractual requirement, discontinue the lease. When you own these, my experience is nobody wants to buy them from you.
No.
You end up tearing them down. They're very difficult to move once they're put in place. So I would recommend, just on the best interest of the district, the taxpayers, is to avoid that and just go into a short-term lease. So that's the proposed preschool village. Very exciting. Here's a few bullet points about it. This change in scope, but touched on the intermediate school. It is a fairly large facility, originally designed years ago as Forest Park Middle School. It's about 80,000 square feet. It has 40 classrooms. It's got a lot of acreage. It's our best facility in terms of the structure, the ease of maintenance, and the building systems that are currently in place. Does it need work? Yes. Does it need as much work as our other buildings? No. So it's the best of what we have at the current moment. Preschool Village could accommodate 15 pre-K classrooms to serve 300 preschoolers at 20 kids per room, 20 students per room, and still leave us with about 20 to 25 classes left over for eventual office space for the central office and the board help and relieve enrollment pressure. So we're looking at this issue of we're building for 3,500 kids, but we already got 3,800. This is a safety valve to help relieve the pressure that will put on us without impacting our LFI and our budget. LFI, locally funded initiative. Currently 100 preschool students at Primary North with 100 on the wait list. This is as of the end of last year. I would expect it to be very similar to that this year if it's not already there. So this improves opportunities for children and families. We know the difference that all-day preschool can make, and this would allow us to expand that program. A grade level in Winton Woods is about 300 kids. So if we can go out and wrap our arms around the children in our community, we should be able to put a preschool village in our district that serves a grade level. That's about 300 kids. They're out there. We just need to help them see that the 5-star rating we've been able to achieve and the great programming we have is good for them. Central office, again, would be in modulars until, well, we'd relocate in summer of 2018, so that's coming up quick. So that's very, very, very soon on my radar. I have to start moving on the permitting and things like that, and the feasibility studies. But then summer of 18, the modular would hopefully be in place, relocate central office and boardroom inside to the intermediate school around 2021 or 2022. All of this is still contingent upon the findings of our architectural team, because we don't have that report in hand yet. We just have, even when we were going through interviews, all 3 architects that were interviewing for the job said, you know that building's in the way, right? Which didn't really occur to us until that process. Construction manager concurs that space will probably be needed for some purpose, given the site.
So, Mr. Denny, one question, the preschool village and that we're looking at, that will not be used, remodeled or whatever with LFI. That would be something different?
So that's correct, yes. We have to determine the best way to do that.
Okay.
Part of what I want to do is identify all of the rooms in that building that have a drain line. If there's 15 of them, we're in pretty good shape already. Because then you can put your amenities for preschool in there, sinks,
Classrooms
toilets.
in there, right, yeah.
That's important that those classrooms
sure,
have
yeah.
that. So that's part of the feasibility study.
Okay.
And then installing drain lines would be probably the biggest expense we would incur to develop that site into a very viable preschool option. So, but those are costs we can analyze as we get into the feasibility studies. Great questions, thank you. 2 new campuses. This is not a new, this is a formerly shared slide, not new, no updates. It's just a nice reference, so it's in there for you to view as well as our community, folks that are interested in just kind of a snapshot of all the parameters around the buildings. Okay, that concludes scope updates. The next 2 are fairly quick compared to that one. Project cost updates, there really aren't any. There are no changes in budget right now. Again, we have some things coming that we think are going to influence the cost, but we don't have a handle on those as of yet. We are currently on budget, $110 million project. LFI, not a new slide. Just want to point out that there is a line item of almost $5 million. Oh, the pointer does work. There it is. So this amount here, 4.9, almost 5 million, is for budget contingency. So that's intended for cost overruns that the commission will not share with us. It's also intended for community facilities like our community learning centers, the CLCs, lead and district offices. So there is a line item in there holding for what we might do with relocating district offices if that becomes necessary. And then, of course, separate but related to the scope of funding is the creation of a preschool village located at the current Winton Woods Intermediate School campus. So that touches back on your question, Dr. Johnson. 3.2 for a new auditorium and 2.4 for material upgrades, additional square footage as needed, again, depending on where our enrollment is as we approach construction document design phase.
So if we got to the point where we're using LFI and it's becoming exhausted, we would probably back off of the platinum status and stay with gold, because getting to platinum will cost us more money.
Yeah. We want it all, but as our facilitator the other day said, we're possibly trying to stuff 10 pounds of sugar into a 5-pound bag, but we want all the sugar we can get. So there's a series of contingencies, but if it came down to lead platinum or core instructional space, our core business is instruction. So those trade-offs would have to be examined closely. Looking at the next section of project management would be schedule updates. There aren't many of these. This is a where are we now? So May, June, July, August. Of note, it's important to point out we do have our architect firmly on board. That's SHP Leading Design. We're very pleased with their addition. And we were able to introduce them to you and most of our staff at Convocation. Moats Engineering joins us for building commissioning services. And all of these are co-funded by the state, by the way. We started our design process in June. Our CMR firm, which is Construction Manager at Risk, that's our delivery model, is Skanska Megan Construction, and we're thrilled that they are part of our team. If you drive by Fairfield, they've done the new Fairfield buildings, and they've done a fantastic job. I had the opportunity to tour Fairfield Freshman School, and it's really, really well done. July 2017, we reconvened the design steering team. We held our eco charrette in August, and right now I did want to let the board know that it appears we're about 1 month off. We have 1 month schedule variance right now, but I think we'll catch up. What's happened is we've encountered some uniqueness in our design, as you might expect, because we're pretty unique, being the second new tech district, at least in our region, possibly the country, and the first district we're aware of that's designing K-12 for new tech. So it's slowed us down a little bit, but sometimes you have to slow down to speed up, and we believe we'll be able to recover the month once we enter the next phase of design development. September, you can look for some things coming, reconvening the campus designs teams. These are very large teams designed to generate input. They're not necessarily decision-making teams. There's about 60 people per team, one for each campus. So you can look for those to be reconvening. September 2017, we should be able to complete the program of requirements, the POR, and begin SD phase, which is schematic design. It's the next phase in the design of these very large facilities. Community forums, probably October, November, beginning to sort of ask the community, hey, this is what we've come up with so far. What do you think? Vetting and gathering input from our community members. And then you can see further down the line, we fast forward a year, we get to June 2018. We hope to work with our architect and CM to develop an early site package to start the work out here in front of this building so that we can empty the middle school 6 months early, avoiding the swing space, getting that building down faster, and finishing that site faster. And I used this analogy a couple times. Forgive me if I've shared it with you already, but if inflation is 2% per year, and we're at a $110 million project, that means every year we wait, it's $2 million. So if we wait 6 months to do something, that's $1 million. Just from the costs going up to purchase things because of inflation. So time literally is money, and we're working to accelerate as much as we can without sacrificing quality.
Mr. Denny, are
Yes,
we,
sir.
because there's been conversation, so the package for these two buildings, are we anticipating having the bid package at the same time to cut back on costs?
As much as we can. We'll wrap as many in the initial bid as possible, and that'll be up to our CM, because they bear the risk. They know they've got a guaranteed maximum price they're going to have to hit. So they will bid as much as they can at once. So if you basically go out and buy materials for both buildings, you're saving that time value of money by avoiding the inflationary cost increases, as well as hopefully creating larger volume, which drives your unit pricing down. So it's a win if we can pull that off.
And it's also a good idea because if we're going to talk about the people managing the facility, if we are operating the same equipment in both buildings, it's easier to manage instead of having an engineer over here who can't understand what's happening in the other building.
Absolutely.
They're comparable pieces of equipment.
If you went with, Philips equipment in one building, you probably should do it in another building. If you went with Johnson Controls in this building, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, we hope to create that in terms of economies of scale as well as operational use down the line. June 2020, finishing construction of the 712 would be anticipated. And the idea there would be to move in August of 2020 to start that school year, 2020, 2021, for the 712. Again, emptying the middle school, the K-6 campus projected right now, very early in the process, but to be completed around the end of the year 2020, looking to do a spring break move-in in 2021.
Can you express to the board how essential it is not to have a winter move-in?
Absolutely. Have any of you ever moved in the winter? It is to be avoided.
No.
Yeah, the temperature and the weather really contributes to a lot of hardship and could actually increase your costs if it takes longer.
The cost is increased because the movers are being paid by the hour, and so they're going slower in the process of inclement weather, and it just ruins the integrity of the program.
You risk damage. It's a much greater risk for damage when you're moving around in ice and slush and so forth. So it's just a better idea to avoid winter moves if you can help it. So this would actually give us a nice cushion to ensure that all punch list items are completed and you occupy a building that's really ready to be moved into. So having that buffer is pretty attractive. And it's on the tail end of construction, not the front end where the costs are. Demolition, pending the board's decisions around land use plan. How will we develop the sites once the buildings are vacated? We would not begin demolition until April of 2021, so that gives the board several years to decide how to go about that process.
But our communication to the public is going to be really critical because we would have taken a lot of time from the community, building, noise, trucks. And so we would have to be very intentional that we're going to come back again after the buildings are there and demolish, which means we're going to upset the community again. But I think the better our communication is about what's going to happen with the timeline, then the community can anticipate. Because once we build buildings, they'll think you're done, you're out of here. Stop, upsetting my community. But letting them know we will have to come back and demolish is something we'll have to let them know up front.
So that concludes that piece of the update, and this is just a schematic overview of the project design schedule, just for 17-18 when design will be going on. And what I was talking about is POR, which is Program of Requirements, which kind of sets the table for what you want included in the building, how many classes, how many cafeteria spaces, auditorium. That was scheduled to be completed in August, and we're still working on it, and we're nearing September, so we're about a month behind. But again, I think you can see these gaps for cushioning. I believe we'll be able to catch up. But we're wrestling with some pretty complex issues that we're about to do something that's not been done before. And we want to make sure we get it right. So sometimes you need to slow down in order to speed up. Design steering team, you can see, campus design teams, departmental teams, when we start engaging with staff more heavily, and then the community forums, first of which I think you'll see in October, November of this year. And the schedule overview of the entire process. So that was the micro view. This is the macro view. All of the previous slide can be found in that green bar right there about design. This gets into construction, and then occupation when you move in, and then when the demolition occurs. Not a new slide. So what questions do you have? I know you asked them as we went along, but I'm happy to entertain any other questions you might have at this time.
I had one question on the kindergarten through sixth grade facility in Green Hills, and you talked about the different site, the site 1 where the track is at. Will the entire facility fit on that little block, and the existing building won't be utilized at all where the space was at?
That's correct. There's some study about we're gonna have to build up. Both these schools will probably end up being 3 stories in spots. Man, not the whole thing, but and then there's some dialogue about is there parts of the building we could take down to accommodate more space, and we've not broached very far into that. There's real pros and cons to weigh, so we want to have real thoughtful dialogue and careful conversation around that. But I don't know if you noticed did you see how it kind of wrapped out into the parking lot? We're going to gobble up some of that space and shift parking. So the idea being you create a building that maybe bends a little or has a wing that comes out into where the lot currently is now. So we're trying to recover as much of the space as we can, but we're going to have to build up.
Ms. Kuhn, the engineers that just finished Northwest, Mr. Denny and I were concerned about having a construction so close to the building. I know that's your concern as well. But they even gave us information, and even with the same company that we're using, they built like 10 feet away from an existing structure, and it didn't upset the instructional methodology in the classroom. Okay. So based on what they do with sound and sound panels. There's a variety of things that they can do with dust and some of that other stuff that just kind of secures it.
And then, I know that the requirement on the green space, but there are some spaces that you can use for, whether it's sports, the baseball diamond and the soccer field is there.
Absolutely.
Could those still be utilized in some measure?
Yes.
In that capacity, like to replay? I know that there's a lot of use for the soccer field, to rent out there.
Right.
I don't know if that is infringing
Yeah, there's
on that
allowable
green space.
uses for greenbelt zoned land. Recreation's one of them. Public utilities is one. It appears the village is, and this is not in writing, it's not final, but their early verbal conversation has been that they would permit us if the soil samples are correct and it's feasible and it makes sense. Geothermal is a real possibility. If that materializes, that they would permit us to use the green space for geothermal because you can't even see it. As long as what you do restores it to its original state, there appears to be some flexibility in the way the code requirements are written to allow us to utilize that space. But for recreation, absolutely.
And
So
those
play space for
geothermal,
kids.
Those are wells that are dug to, work on the energy
And that's an interesting idea too. I think it's would be received well by the community. And then as far as traffic movement in and out, how would the buildings, as they would be for the middle school or the primary building, how would that be configured to leave and go and traffic flow in the community? And
Still under development.
okay.
Traffic studies are very close to starting at both sites. Kleiner's group is going to handle that. They do really good work. They do this all. They're civil engineers. They do it all the time. So we're looked at that. We want to have some data to inform our process, and then start moving toward what would the site layout need to look like. That site's tight. I mean, it's got some concerns with access. There are outlet points. It does have two, but we want to make sure that we're doing that in the most respectful, appropriate way.
Yep.
So we're still studying that one.
Okay, yeah.
Stay tuned.
Well, I just wanted to tell you that how much I appreciate this presentation, especially the breakdown with the dates. That meticulous type of planning helps us as we communicate that to constituents and community members. So
Very good.
thank you for that.
Absolutely. It helps us too. With the board's permission and Mr. Smith, if there are no more questions on this, if I could move into an item that would require the board's approval. It's later in the agenda, but it's bus stops and schools declared impractical.
So you want to go ahead and move into 9.04 then?
If that's acceptable, yeah.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, moving into that agenda item that would require the approval of the board, not a report, that is. We would be looking at two items. I believe the first that appears is bus stops. Is that accurate?
Nope,
Or is it
the
schools?
impractical.
Okay, thank you. So, list of schools declared impractical for pupil transport for 2017, 2018. You should have before you that list. It is actually unchanged from last school year, so we have no new schools to add or take off of that list. Time studies have been conducted, and these are the schools that are within the 30-minute transportation boundary, but are not practical because of either enrollment or capacity of the fleet to reach them, or both. So we would ask the board's favorable consideration of this list and request your approval for this item.
Madam President, I would like to make a motion to approve the list of schools declared impractical to provide transportation during the 17-18 school year as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion or questions?
Yeah, Mr. Denny, can you check one school? I don't believe the Harmony School still exists.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Aye.
Mrs. Miranda?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and Mr. Denny will move into the 9.04 for the bus stops.
Thank you, President Miranda. Board, you should have before you a list of stops generated by our Transportation Department showing the requested stops to be approved for the 2017 school year, 2017-2018. They are listed straight out of the Versatrans routing system, so we would ask your favorable consideration and subsequent approval of this list for this school year.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the bus stops for 2017-2018 school year as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Denny.
Thank you, Board.
And now we will wrap back and go to 9.02 for the personnel schedules.
Yes. The recommendation is to approve personnel schedules as presented. Schedule A, resignations and retirements. Schedule B, certificated staff. Schedule C, support staff. Schedule D, extra duty and supplemental employment. Schedule E, leaves. And finally, Schedule M, termination of classified employees.
I make a motion to approve the personnel schedules as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And now Superintendent 9.03.
Yes, Madam President and Board, this is an annual trip through the with the Academy of Global Studies, and the recommendation is to approve the proposal for an overnight extended student trip, Academy of Global Studies at Winton Woods High School, grade 9 to Little Rock and Perry, Arkansas. The dates are November 2nd to the 5th as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposal for overnight extended student trip, Academy of Global Studies at Winton Woods High School, 9th grade, Little Rock and Perry, Arkansas, from November 2nd through the 5th, 2017, as presented.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Superintendent. Now we will move on to item 10.01 for the legislative report. Board colleagues, in the purple folder you have before you is the important pieces that I pulled from OSBA's briefcase for you. A couple things I wanted to mention from this because there's a couple bits of good information under the, let's see what page it's on. Starting on page 4, there's some items of HB 49 from the new state budget that OSBA is giving us a great report on. I actually went to what they call their BAD seminar. What was that, week before last, which stands for Budget and Discussion. So that was very, very nutritious, so to speak, and they actually had representatives there from the state legislature to speak to the room full of treasurers and superintendents and school board members. It got a little hairy for a little bit, but it was good dialogue. So if you'll notice there, the final biennial state budget and its impact on public education, and here's some kind of highlights. So it provides $16.8 billion for education, with a formula for per pupil spending increasing only by $10 over these next 2 years. So as you can see, per student, we're currently at $6,010. The second year it moves to $6,020. So pretty much it's a flat lined budget with no room for increases. Other changes is the ways in which our seniors can obtain and earn their diploma, such as senior year attendance, community service, employment, and completing a senior capstone project. So stay tuned for information to come from there in combination with OD and what we decide to do as local public school districts. Another thing I wanted to point out is that HB 49 also eliminated the 4th and 6th grade social studies tests for our students. So there are a lot of things in the biennial budget, more than just the dollars we get per student. So I would encourage you to go and take a look at that. There's a lot of good information in there of changes coming down the line. And to go back to something the superintendent and Ms. Wilson talked about earlier for the state resource or the school resource officers and our new lead security monitor that we just approved this evening, there is a bill that was just passed that's going to require school resource officers to meet new training requirements and be aware of certain responsibilities before taking on their roles. So it seems as if Winton Woods is in line with this, so this is great, and I applaud both of you for being on top of that, so thank you very much. And that would complete my legislative report for this evening. And Mr. Birdie is not here for the Great Oaks report, so we will just defer until next meeting.
Madam President, can I add one piece?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Holden was able to do some additional research because in the new legislation as it relates to student graduation, there is an attendance number that students must maintain. And people were having a conversation that this is about a 4-year. No, it is their senior year. So that attendance has to be met their senior year. So it's not a 90+% over a 4-year period, which does.
That's good to point out.
Yes.
So it doesn't encompass the entire high school career. Okay. So the next item on our agenda is the board motions. So we will move right into item 11.01. And board of motion would be in order for this one.
Madam President, I would like to make a motion to amend the superintendent's contract effective August the 1st, 2017 to $154,000.
I'll second that.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion and or questions? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kim?
Aye.
Mrs. Moran?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And we will need a motion for item 11.02.
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to amend the treasurer's contract effective August the 1st, 2017 to $133,500.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any questions and or discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Seymour, would you please call that vote?
Mrs. Ruggles?
Aye.
You hesitate. Dr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mrs. Kim?
Aye.
Mrs. Moran?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. 11.03 is setting the appointment for our delegate to the Ohio School Board's Capital Conference. That happens in November of this year. I was going to appoint Mr. Birdie, but I don't think that's fair since he's not here, so I'll just go ahead and appoint myself as the delegate to go and take on that hefty duty of a job. So, yeah, he can be the alternate. That would be great. Thank you, Randy. We need a second on that?
No, just.
Okay. And do you need a formal motion? Okay. All right. Okay, so next we'll move into board comments. Mrs. Ruggles, any comments from you?
I just want to send kudos out to the high school staff. I thought that was an excellent idea. I hear that Mr. Smith and Mr. Martin asked them to think outside the box and figure out how to improve parent engagement. And we all know that parent engagement is key to the success of our students in our districts. And for them to combine the opening game with open house, I thought that was an excellent idea. Just continuing to working on finding ways to support the district through community partnerships, and really glad that we thought about honoring our Tom Urban tonight. He is going to bring some excellent opportunities, or help facilitate some excellent opportunities for Winton Woods and our community. So I'm looking forward to that. And just a quick kudos to Superintendent Smith and Courtney Wilson. I like the idea about the security, having a forward thought about the lead security officer that will bring some training, and recognizing that there's been a gap in that training. And there was another instance of this that I saw some forward thought with the leadership with Mr. Smith when he thought about the truancy officer. And then the state went ahead and said there's going to be some requirements for districts for the truancy officers, or the districts to pay attention to the truancy of students. So I like the idea that we're being proactive and thinking outside of the box to get ahead of some issues. So that's it.
Okay, Dr. Johnson?
No comment.
Mrs. Kuhn?
Excited about welcoming our students back to school, because that's what we're here for, and I hope they have a great school year.
Yes, I'm just going to mimic much of that same sentiment. I was lucky enough to get to go to 2 of our open houses as a parent, if I can wear that hat when I walk into a building anymore, just that one hat. Can I do that for once? But it was fantastic. It was definitely a very robust change from last year non-PBL to this year unrolling PBL across the district and going to our open houses. It was really fun. The teachers seemed to have a really good time with it, and there was a lot more entire building participation in the open house, so it was great. So kudos to our staff and our principals for making creative and thoughtful things happen in our buildings from the get-go.
Ms. Miranda, also, I forgot to talk about Mrs. Denny and the Claptons, the excitement that was generated around the beginning of the school year. I think it's grown. The energy at each of the schools, I went to the same schools, and it seemed like it had increased. So kudos to you and your team as well.
Yeah, that's always a great event. Yes, Brandon Smith. Shout out to Brandon Smith.
Yes.
Thank you so much for starting that here in Winton Woods. It has become an awesome tradition, something I hope goes on forever. So, okay, I don't think we have a representative from either of our unions this evening. So anything you would like to add, Superintendent Smith or Treasurer Seymour? Okay. Reminder to the community, please come out this Thursday, 6 p.m., this same room for our State of the Schools presentation. Much of what we talked about tonight will be incorporated into that presentation. So please come out and join us, bring a friend, and thank you all for your attendance this evening. We have no need for executive session, so welcome back to school, and let the record reflect that we have the most organized, creative, and phenomenal principals and staff serving our kids. So thank you for that. And have a great evening and a wonderful holiday weekend. Meeting is adjourned.